Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Leonie. Thank you for being here again. So today we are going to be doing a book haul because over the past 6 months I've especially been collecting a few books that just have such beautiful art in them or is just so pretty that I really want to make a video showcasing them. And I also just have like a bunch more books that are just novels that I'm very excited to read very soon. The first one I actually recently bought and because it was raining they wrapped it for me, even though it wasn't a present or anything. I was just buying it for myself, so I thought it would be fun to kind of unbox it or, you know, like unwrap it in this video as if it's a little present for myself. This is a book that I bought initially as a present for a friend because it was something she had been looking for quite a while, and when I bought it for her and gave it to her at her birthday I was like, actually this book is so cool, I think I'm gonna buy a copy for myself as well. And that's what this is. Wow, a big book. It is called Terra Ultima by Raoul de Leo. This is an illustrated book that has won the Dutch prize for Best Illustrated Book of 2022. And the idea of this is that the author came up with this fictional continent that is full of fictional animals and fictional flora, and he's made so many illustrations about these fictional animals and their fictional habitats and all the fictional evolution. Look at that, that's so cool. Like, it's beautiful. Like, not only is the art beautiful, I just love the idea of this fictional continent that hasn't been discovered yet and that people go to like explore and discover all the things that can be found there. You know, like this. Like, I've always had a love for stories that are about exploration and discovering like new areas of the world. Anything with this kind of like map-ish aesthetic, you can count me in. And then on top of that, the illustrations are just gorgeous, which I love because I love art, and I've decided that I want to buy more books that have beautiful art in them. I will say that I tried looking for whether there's an English translation. I could only find a Spanish and a French translation, but as far as I know it hasn't been translated into English yet. Then I want to show you the next kind of beautiful book. We're just first going to go through all the like really beautiful artsy books and then we'll get to the novels. This is a book that I already know is the best book that I bought in 2023. I know that it's only April. I already know that not a single other book can top this. It's quite a heavy one. When I wasn't home when they delivered it, so they delivered it at my neighbor's. So I went to my neighbor's to take the package and he gave it to me and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really heavy. But it is this. It is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Creating a Champion, which is basically just the book of concept art for Breath of the Wild, which is one of my favorite, if not, no, it just is my favorite game of all time. If you don't know, Breath of the Wild is a game for the Nintendo Switch, and I'm obsessed with that game. I love it. So the idea of this book is that it shows all of the design that went into creating this game. So that means concept art. That means early designs. It means showing how they created all the areas, all the characters, all the weapons. Like, everything had to be designed at some point. And it's just so cool to see that process and all the official art for every single little thing in this book. Also, I just love the Zelda art style. Oh, look at this. That's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. I would highly recommend anyone checking out concept art books for any game or movie that you are a fan of. I know that there are beautiful concept art books for the Ghibli movies, and I think I want to collect those next because, oh my gosh, do I love just having this book and going through it. And every time someone comes by in my room who's also a fan of the Zelda games and they see this book, like, it's always like a moment of happiness where we just kind of go through the pages together and be like, oh my god, look at that, it's so cool. So yes, this brought me immense joy. So I wanted to share that. Oof. Heavy book. Next up, there's a book that I bought when I was in London. In January, I went to London. There are all these really cool kind of container shops, and one of these shops was this kind of like witchy alternative shops, and they had all sorts of very cool books there. And that's where I bought this nonfiction book called Alchemy and Mysticism by Alexander Roop. This kind of chronicles all the ideas, all the symbolism in the old occult sciences that were practiced a few centuries ago, specifically through the lens of how you can see this appear in art and occult alchemist art. So it's full of these beautiful art pieces and illustrations of all these occult symbols. I don't really know why, but I just find this super interesting to read about because it kind of feels like this magical science, you know, like back in the day they didn't really know better, so this was like legit science for them, trying to turn lead into gold or trying to find ways to become immortal, things like that. I just find it so fascinating, this kind of magical, mystical belief that also feels very scientific. It feels like real life fantasy, and I think also because a lot of the books that I really love very clearly draw on occult themes, like the Gilded Wolves trilogy or Ninth House by Lee Bardugo. And going through this book and reading about all these little symbols, I noticed how many things of, for example, Ninth House were inspired by these like actual occult sciences. The next pretty book that I want to show is just a very nice edition of a book. I got one of those very nice small cloth-bound penguin editions of E.T.A. Hoffmann's The Nutcracker. So The Nutcracker is a story that is just very close to my heart, mostly because of the Barbie movie. Actually 100% because of the Barbie movie. I really associate The Nutcracker with Christmas, and I've also read the original story, or actually I listened to it on audiobook and I really enjoyed it, but because I listened to it on audiobook I didn't really own a copy of it. I thought, let me buy myself a little special edition of this story, so maybe I can reread it next Christmas. It's not very long, it's about 180 of these kind of small pages, so I'm very happy that this is now in my collection as well. And then another book, the last of kind of the pretty books that I really want to show, is not a new book, but it's kind of a new edition of a book. So I have here Radio Silence, which you guys know I love, and I bought this like 2 years ago. But last summer, when I was at Y'all Fest, there was a little stand there. And what they did was do custom spray paint edges of a book of your choice. And I got them to spray paint my copy of Radio Silence. So as you can see, it now has all these little planets on it, which if you've read Radio Silence makes a lot of sense because there's this podcast called Universe. And I realized I'd never actually shown this in a video yet, so I just wanted to share it. I really like this idea of having a unique copy of one of my favorite books, Radio Silence, with this unique spray painting on it. Okay, those were all like the, I guess, pretty beautiful artsy books. Oh no, wait, I actually have something fun, another thing to show you. This is kind of a thrift store find. So a while back, me and a friend were going to make like collages. And if you're going to make collages, a great way to get things to collage with is books from thrift stores. You can find a lot of artsy books at thrift stores. And one of the books that my friend found to use, I thought was so cool that I asked her if I could have it after our collaging section, so I could continue to use it to make collages. And it is this book called The Victorian Wallpaper Design Coloring Book. Something I never knew existed, but it does. It is Victorian wallpaper as a coloring book. Like, it's just full of these pictures of Victorian wallpaper, and it's black and white so you can color it in. And they all say wallpaper. 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 I don't know why they all say wallpaper, but they all say wallpaper. And this is just one of those super odd books that you can only find at a thrift store, but it's really pretty, and I think I can use these designs if I want to make more collages. So yeah, this is just kind of like a fun little book that I wanted to show you guys. Moving on to the actual novels. I have a few novels over here that I haven't actually shown on my channel yet, that I bought these. So consider them like a mini TBR. Like, these are the books that I really want to read soon. So first we have 3 books actually that I also bought when I was in London in January. I was at Word on the Water, which is my favorite bookstore in London. It's a bookstore on a boat, and it's very cute and small, but I love it. And what they have there is so many of those Penguin Great Ideas. Penguin has this series called Great Ideas. It's a series of very short non-fiction books by like philosophers or like great thinkers or activists or great authors who have written like very short essays that do contain, well, great ideas. For example, A Room of One's Own. I have the Great Ideas edition of it, and I kind of want to collect more of them in this edition. So I have here What is Existentialism by Simone de Beauvoir. You know, presumably is about existentialism. About the question, how should we think and act in the world? I've followed a few philosophy classes in university, and we did talk about Simone de Beauvoir mostly in, I mean, what she's known for is her thoughts on feminism. And when we talked about existentialism, we mostly talked about her husband, Sartre. But I was interested in, you know, actually reading her own thoughts on existentialism. So that's what I got. And then I also got Man Alone with Himself by Friedrich Nietzsche. From what I gathered, this is kind of a combination of his thoughts, so it will be a little bit more accessible than straight up reading one of his like full books. So that's why I thought this would be interesting. And then the last book that I got in London is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. Ursula K. Le Guin writes a lot of science fiction. Wow. She writes a lot of science fiction that explore all these interesting ideas about society, you know. And I've read The Dispossessed by her, and I've always wanted to read specifically this one, The Left Hand of Darkness, which, if I'm correct, is about someone who travels to another planet where the concept of gender is completely different than on our planet. And because of that, the story that unfolds there really explores different ideas of love and how our ideas of love are influenced by our ideas of gender. And I think that's gonna be super interesting. I love the little blurb at the end. David Mitchell says, Ursula Le Guin is a chemist of the heart. What a beautiful way of putting that. And then these 3 books I recently bought. If you follow my second channel, then you will have already seen me buying these books because I uploaded a video of me going book shopping and getting these books. If you don't know, I now have a second channel called Leonie Crystal, which is my first and second name. I'll link it in the description. And so far I've mostly been posting more kind of like slow, chill reading vlogs on there. So if you like my reading vlogs, you should subscribe to the second channel. But these are the books that I bought because I went to a bookstore and they had like a 3 for 2 deal going on. The first book that caught my eye is Robert Holstock's Mythigo Wood. Now I will say, I'd never heard of this, but apparently, first of all, it is the winner of the World Fantasy Award for Best Novel, and it is about a mythical wood, like a magical forest, which is, I think, one of my favorite tropes of all time. I'm always looking for more books about magical wood, so it was really surprising that I'd never heard of this. I'm gonna guess that it's popular since it won the World Fantasy Award, but it's probably just because it's, I think it was published in the 80s. When was it? Yeah, it was published, oh, that's 40 years ago. Almost 40 years ago, 1984. 1984. So maybe that's why not a lot of people online are talking about this anymore. So that's why I was just really fascinated. Let's rediscover some books that were published in the last century, shall we? And then I got 2 books by Angela Carter, because Angela Carter is an author that I've been wanting to get into for quite a long time. I know that she is known to write kind of horrific stories that are also very fantastical, which is a combination that I always really love. 2 of her books were included in the 3 for 2 sale, so that's why I got them. The first one is Heroes and Villains by Angela Carter. This one struck my eye because apparently it's described as a, what was it, a gothic fantasy that's also post-apocalyptic fiction and a twisted romance. It's about a girl named Marianne who's kind of stuck in this tower, and she lives among kind of like the rational professors. Once every few days they get attacked by barbarians who are like evil and villainous, but one day Marianne runs away from her hometown because she's forced to marry someone and she doesn't want that. She doesn't want to live like the standard girly life, so she runs away and ends up with the barbarians, and it just kind of explores that idea of heroes and villains and good and evil and man and woman. I'm currently reading this, and I'll have to say so far it hasn't convinced me yet of Angela Carter's greatness, but from what I've heard, this is actually, I only realized this after I bought them, but this is actually one of her like least popular novels, and I should probably start with another one. And the other book by Angela Carter that I got is also one that is apparently definitely not her most famous work, but alas, and it is Black Venus. This is one of her short story collections. Angela Carter is also very much known for her short stories. Again, apparently her other collection, The Bloody Chamber, is way more loved and way more popular than Black Venus, but I didn't know that as I was in the bookstore. I used to think that I didn't like short stories until I realized that some short stories are just so fantastic at using an interesting idea or just a small emotion or like a little thought, and then just using that for a short story and making you think about something. And short stories are great for that. So I wanted to get one of her short story collection. This one specifically focuses on women and the role of women in stories, in cultures, in society. As you can see, I don't know what I did with it, but somehow the book has already gotten wet and it's kind of a little bit mangled. But you know what? I don't actually mind that. I used to mind this a lot, but I don't really anymore. So these are 6 new books that I bought that I haven't read yet that I'm very excited to read. So consider this like a little TBR. And then the last books that I want to show, yeah, there's more. There's more. This is just because, you know, last time I did book haul was 6 months ago, so this video is just me showing every single book that I bought since then. And the last, what is it, 5 books that I want to show are books that I've already read and that I've already talked about on this channel quite a lot, so that's why I decided to just keep them until the end, but I will still show them to you in case you're interested or in case you're new here. All the way in December of last year, I got for Christmas The Demon in the Wood by Leigh Bardugo and illustrated by Danny Pendergast. This is an illustrated graphic novel version of the short story The Demon in the Wood, written by Leigh Bardugo, and it kind of gives you a little bit more insight into one of the main villains of the Grishaverse, the Darkling, and it's really about him when he is younger. He's still with his mother. You can see the dynamic that he has with his mother, and this story chronicles something that I guess you could say is just one little building block into him eventually becoming a villain. And it has a beautiful art style as well. The next book I initially bought as a Christmas present for a friend, but then she turned out to already own it, so I just kept it for myself, and that is Legends and Lattes, which is the very popular high fantasy, low stakes, cozy fantasy book. It follows an orc woman who's kind of done with her usual questing and fighting monsters and instead decides to start a little coffee shop together with a succubus. And it's a tale about them trying to start up their business, introduce all these fantasy creatures to the concept of coffee, and it's mostly just vibes. And in the same vein of cozy fantasy, I also bought The Secret Society of Irregular Witches because I was making a video of me reading cozy fantasy books. This one is about Micah Moon, who is a witch, and in this world, witches are not allowed to get together because if there's too much magic together, people might find out about it. She is summoned to this kind of estate where there are 3 young witches living together, and she's asked to teach them magic, which obviously shocks her because she's like, wait, I thought witches weren't supposed to be together. And the story really is about her finding her found family, learning that she deserves love and deserves to be loved by a family and the people around her. It's also part romance between like the sunshiny Micah Moon and the very grumpy, surly librarian. Also, somewhere at the beginning of this year, I bought Rainer Maria Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. This is a super short book. There was this young poet named Franz Xaver Kappus who wrote a letter to Rainer Maria Rilke asking him for guidance, basically asking him for advice on becoming a poet. And this short little story shows all the letters that Rainer Maria Rilke wrote back to Kappus with his advice on how to be a young artist, you know, how to deal with love, how to deal with life. And it's kind of like a little, not a self-help book, but it's just this very densely packed little collection of very beautiful life advice from the big poet Rainer Maria Rilke. And then the last book that I bought, that I've already talked about, is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This is her adult debut. It's one of those books that doesn't really have a plot. It's mostly just vibes and flashbacks. You follow 2 perspectives. On the one hand, you follow the bridegroom who has recently married Indigo, who is this beautiful, magical woman who lives in this old estate that is very gothic and almost feels alive, but she has a lot of secrets surrounding her, and the bridegroom, although he's not allowed, is kind of trying to find out about her secrets. And you also follow the perspective of Azure, who was Indigo's childhood friend, and through her perspective you kind of slowly find out about this very toxic, codependent relationship that she had with Indigo while they were friends. And throughout the novel you're just kind of slowly figuring out these secrets that Indigo has and just the weird dynamics that is going on between these characters. It's very mysterious and it's very vibey. I talk about this in my recent wrap-up. Actually, about all of these 3 books, I talk about them in my recent wrap-up that I uploaded last week. Whew. Okay, those were all the books. Mostly I just wanted to show the pretty books that I got. This is just a very simple video because I'm spending my time on some exciting other things that are coming very soon, so just another simple video from me this week, but I still hope you really enjoyed it. Again, if you would like to see like chill reading vlogs from me, you should check out my second channel, Leonie Crystal, linked in the description. I hope you enjoyed your time today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you soon in another video very soon. Okay, goodbye.